see you guys in the dark.
I'll keep it quick and give you the basic details. I'm 18 and my ex-boyfriend is 23. We dated for about 3 months, and then 2 months ago, I decided we weren't compatible for various reasons. A major one of which was he didn't respect my religious belief. I'm a Christian, and the main part he didn't understand was that I couldn't sleep with him before marriage. Our relationship seemed pretty good, although it was my first relationship. So I don't know a lot to base it off of, and he always seemed like a good person. Our breakup was amicable enough, and he wanted to stay friends, which pretty much consisted of texting each other, small talk, meeting up occasionally, things like that. More like acquaintances than real good friends, I suppose. But the point is, we didn't fall out. There weren't really any particular red flags before about 2 weeks ago, when we had a bit of an argument. It was Sunday, so I went to church as usual. And to my surprise, he came to meet me afterwards. We set off, walking back to my house, and he rolled his eyes at me and said something along the lines of, "I can't believe someone like you would buy into rubbish like that." Honestly, even if he was joking, the fact that he wasn't even making an effort to tolerate my belief kind of bugged me a little bit, and I told him so. His response? "Yeah, well, I'm not going to like it if it's the reason I haven't stuck my dick in you yet." I wasn't at all prepared for him to say that, and I was just shocked and disgusted that he was being like this after we had tried to have a normal friendship, so I just walked away from him. I couldn't think of anything to say, so I sped up and walked away. He caught up with me and tried to put his arm around me, telling me to be honest, because he knew that I wanted him as well. I pretty much shoved him off of me and ran the rest of the way back home. Almost straight afterwards, he texted me an apology, which I ignored for a little while I tried to calm down. Then replied with, "Fine, just please don't say things like that in the future." And I genuinely believed he wouldn't. A little dumb, I know, but he had always seemed pleasant before. His apology seemed pretty genuine, and I'll confess, I may have been a soft touch where he was concerned, seeing as I still cared about him, and had regretted breaking up with him a few times since we broke up. Anyway, things settled back down to normal for about 3 days. Then he messaged me, saying he still wanted me. Before I could reply, he sent an apology, and I reaffirmed that I only wanted to be friends with him now. That's when he decided to flip the crazy switch on me. I received a string of texts telling me that a platonic relationship wasn't going to work. We should be friends with benefits because he had to have sex at some point, promptly followed by a request to meet up with me. I thought the best response to that level of sudden weirdness that had caught me off guard was no response at all, which is usually a pretty clear no if everything I had said before hadn't been. He didn't stop, even after an hour's silence from me. In fact, it got creepier. He accused me of teasing him, and then said that we were going to have sex, whether I was playing his game or not. At this point, I was pretty panicky because he was starting to sound like he was going to rape me. But I tried to calmly respond in case I was getting things out of hand in my head and reading it a little wrong, or in case he was genuinely thinking I was just playing hard to get. So on the off chance I was misunderstanding, I spelled it out for him, telling him clearly I was ignoring because I wasn't interested. His follow-up to that chilled me to the bone. He accused me of being a bitch because I was mad about Sunday still, then told me if I didn't go meet him, he was going to come around when you're home alone and get what I want. At this point, I felt like I didn't know him at all anymore, and I couldn't predict if he was serious or not. So I got scared and decided I should tell the police. I told them as much as I could, hoping that he'd back off now, but he didn't. He just seemed to find it funny and told me that by the time they managed to do anything, "You'll be mine." At this point, I thought I wasn't safe in my home, and I got out. Well, I put the post online first, because I wanted some evidence if I really didn't make it to the police. Then packed some emergency things, and drove to my parents' house, an address my ex was thankfully unaware of. Once I was there, I showed my father the messages that I'd been sent, and he took me to the police station immediately. For moral support, and because he was very angry at the time. The police did drive-bys of my house that night, because we were concerned about break-ins after threats to come and get me. But happily, no one tried to break in. Even so, they took my ex in for questioning in the morning. A police officer handling this got in touch with me much later that day and told me they had adequate evidence from me and detaining and questioning him. I rather be basically admitted it wasn't very repentant about it, so that I can actually press charges. Currently planning to charge him with sexual harassment and threatening behavior. After that, he was released on bail with conditions not to contact me. I wish I could say that that's the end of it, but I'm suspicious that he has contacted me. 2 days after the original texts were sent, I worked the breakfast shift at the cafe I work in, and not long after I arrived, some flowers with a card were delivered. The delivery person had clearly been given my name, since he asked for me by name. The card was the creepy part, though it was written to order, and probably toned down quite a bit in comparison to what he might have written personally, but it made my skin crawl nonetheless. First off, it started by calling me love, referred to this incident just as a falling out. It had an apology on it, like that would make me feel even better, but then said that I should apologize to him too because we both took it too far, then said I'd be happier if we got together again. It wasn't signed by his name, but it wasn't hard to tell who it was. But I don't have evidence, so I don't know if I can say that this violates his bail conditions. I did report it to the police, but they didn't have much that they could do either. Given the lack of proof, it was his. I've also had similar issues with social media. Some weird Facebook friend requests I've deleted that I think were from him, but nothing serious, thankfully. All I can really say to finish this, or at least hopefully finish this, since I'm praying this is a non-ongoing story, is, Creepy X, I've got my pepper spray, and I'm staying with my parents, where I can reach my dad's gun, so it's probably in both our interests not to meet again. Until I take you to court, that is. Edit. The first thing that I have to add is that, following the advice of some of the wonderful people, I've called the florist who sent me the gift and explained the situation. The person on the end of the line was actually quite shoddy about it and told me they didn't give out personal information, whether I had boyfriend troubles or not. So I spoke to the police officer handling my case, who, by the way, couldn't have been better. Very understanding and professional at the same time. And he went into the shop in person. Needless to say, they do not give out customer details if a policeman asks. And surprise, surprise, it was my ex. So that counts as bail violation, since he was told not to contact me whatsoever, and he is back in custody for the time being. Another recent update. 3 days after he was taken into custody again, I went back to my usual residence, seeing as how he wasn't a threat anymore. I was still nervous though, so I went with my dad. When we got in, it was evident that a lot of mail had been shoved through the letterbox while I was away. Some of it was genuine stuff, but most of it was reams and reams of crumpled up paper. Not sent via a mailman, as none of it has any envelopes, and it looked as though someone had shoved it in. There was also a small parcel, bundled up in gift paper, but with no labels, which set off alarm bells, especially after I read some of those letters. They basically read like him going mental on paper, pages and pages of rambling about how we're meant to be, and he can't live without me, and I'm being silly, selfish, and stupid for not giving him a second chance. One part sticks in my mind, where he swore he wasn't going to let this go, no matter what. After that, I was super uncomfortable, and not sure what I wanted to say there, even though he was in custody, and I was pretty much safe. I put off committing to staying or leaving, just hung out with my dad for a while, deliberately not opening the parcel. I wasn't sure I wanted to know what kind of thing he'd send me after what I'd read, but eventually I did open it. That's how I decided to go back to my parents' home for a little while, just for comfort. Because inside was a small box, wrapped in a couple of layers of paper. The paper was another long, rambling letter that unnerved me. He went to great lengths to tell me that, although we all make mistakes, and both of us took it too far, he would love me forever, and if I apologized to him and stopped acting stupid, we can just forget what happened between us and start over again, as husband and wife. His words there, not mine. Yes, he seriously proposed to me like that. Yes, the box had an engagement ring in it. It's a pretty ring, but I know I'd never be comfortable wearing it. No, I'm definitely not going to marry him. I'm going to add this to the growing list of evidence I'm showing the police, and the courtroom. Now, shortly after, there was another creep, but I thought I'd keep the concern among you updated as it's connected to my ex. I didn't consider that it was at first. The incident that creeped me out happened on Wednesday, 1st of August. I was leaving work, and there was a man sitting on a car's bonnet across the street. The car gave me an odd sense of deja vu that I couldn't place, but I figured, whatever. Maybe he's a regular or something, and he's just waiting for someone. I kept walking, only to be distracted by someone calling out in a broken, accented attempt at my first language. It may be relevant to note at this point, my ex-boyfriend and I are from different European countries. We don't speak each other's native languages, and usually converse in English. This man had a similar accent to my ex, but at that time I didn't think much of it. He shouted something like, "Hey, you," and I turned to see what was going on, and whether he was talking to me or not. He was standing in the road now, pointing at me, and beckoned when he saw me looking at him, but I stood my ground. I wasn't going to walk out into the road to have a conversation with someone I didn't even know, so I just asked him, "Do I know you?" in case I had just failed to recognize him or something. Obviously, this amused him somehow, because he laughed at me, shaking his head. Now the encounter had gone from a little out of the ordinary to very weird to me, and given the recent events with my ex-boyfriend, I was quite paranoid, so I turned more aggressive and confrontational than I otherwise would, and demanded that he tell me why he had stopped me. "No reason," he shrugged. "Your name's my first name, right?" At that point, I freaked out, and just started walking quickly away. I wanted to get away from this odd man who knew my name and wouldn't say what he wanted. As I left, I heard him laugh again. The way he did itself was weird and unpleasant. A grating kind of noise that I can't describe properly. And he yelled, "All right, see you next week." At this point, I really didn't want to meet him ever again, but it didn't end there. That is, I didn't see him again, but the car remained across the street, basically not moving at all for 2 days. Today I decided to check the plates. I know that may make me seem a little creepy too, but here's my reasonings. I was a little nervous that it might be my ex's. We didn't date for a long time, and I only saw his car a few times. All I really remember about it was he was personalized plates. I was right, so it seems that somehow my ex has managed to send some other creep to harass me while he is in custody, which just adds to the stress of the approaching court date. Lovely. I'm not sure how he can encourage someone to harass me from custody, where he is currently, but I'm not sure what he is or isn't allowed to do from there, so I'd have to go check. Maybe get in touch with the police again. Either way, it seems to me neither of these people are worth having in my life, and after the case is closed, I hope that I never see them again. The police have wheeled, clamped, and taped off the car, then searched it. According to what the officer in charge of the case was able to tell me afterwards, they found several guns, some of which are illegal where I live. My ex, who the car is registered to, is not a registered legal gun owner in the first place, so they could all be illegal unless they are someone else's. The police are apparently looking for this other man by the description I gave them. Nothing else suspicious was found in the car as far as I've been told. The man I saw with the car came into my workplace today. I wasn't paying attention at first and went over to take his order as per usual. He grabbed my arm and asked me to go outside with him. That's when it clicked that it was the same guy, especially when he spoke to me. I pulled away from him, fortunately. He wasn't holding me tightly, and I'm strong enough to get out of his grip, then hurried into the back, in the staff-only area, and get my boss's attention. I told him what happened, and he called the police. The man had gone by the time they arrived. Probably figured out it wasn't wise to stick around for my reaction. So they found him later and took him in for questioning. He's been released with a warning. The firearms in the car weren't his. They are my ex's apparently, which scares me a little more. And he seemed genuinely bewildered. Not entirely sure if he's a good actor or my ex didn't give him the true story. But from what he apparently told the police, my ex told him we were together and he persuaded him to help me to do a fake kidnapping prank to scare me. I am so glad that the court hearing is coming up. I was shaking and trying not to cry hearing the gory facts from the policeman handling my case over the phone. I'm not sure how well I'll hold it together in court. Today was the court hearing. I was originally charging him with sexual harassment and threatening behavior. In sight of other things, including police investigations and his friend confessing, he was also being charged with possession of illegal weapons, planned kidnapping, stalking, and failure to comply with bail. Not going to lie, this morning I was very emotional. But I can happily say he's out of my way, as I have a restraining order, and he has an 8-year prison sentence now. I'm definitely relieved about all of this, and I really hope that he has learned his lesson. So a few years ago, my boyfriend's dad's family decided to get together and all chip in to rent a condo in Ontario and get together. There was a big extended family over there that his dad never saw, because he really only got along with one of his 3 sisters. My boyfriend's mom had talked him into going, and they let him tag along because I've been around long enough and they've liked me and trusted me. I can't remember where everyone else had gone. I think it was to the beach for what was probably like the 3rd time that day. It was just me and my boyfriend at the condo, because we were kind of sick of the beach and just wanted to do nothing in the shade for a little while. We were sitting outside, looking over the water, and just kind of talking about life. I had just finished reading the Harry Potter series, so we were just kind of talking about that for a bit, when this woman comes out of the bushes behind the condo. This condo was about an acre of land, maybe, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. The front of the condo was probably 70 feet from the dirt road. No one traveled down, really. And there were some dense trees and brush and whatnot that surrounded 3 sides of it. This woman comes out of the wooded area, and immediately knew something wasn't right. She was limping, and she only had 1 sandal, and frankly, she looked like shit. She was pale, and her face was gaunt. She was really, really pretty, but she just looked exhausted. The thing that immediately caught my attention was her baby, who she was holding pretty tightly in her arms as she started to come towards us. I didn't really know what to do, but my boyfriend immediately got up and walked over to make sure that she was okay. I couldn't help but think all of these awful things might happen. After spending so many hours hearing horror stories and stuff, I was just terrified she'd do something. My boy is a lot more trusting than I am, and he's always had the first instinct of, what's the problem and how can I help? He's never assumed the bad in anybody. So this woman is just sobbing by the time he gets to the porch on the condo, and she looks like she has just been through a war zone. She's shaking and hyperventilating, crying, and still telling us that basically her boyfriend had been a drunk for a while, and he's been getting worse and worse, and he's been an overall abusive guy. He'd get pissed whenever she was focused on the baby instead of him, and part of what pissed him off was that it wasn't his kid, so he kind of didn't care about the baby at all. She told us how this time in particular he was drunk, and she was driving him home with the baby in the back seat, and he grabbed the baby's booster seat and tore it out of the car and threw it out the window while they were driving. She got the baby out of the seat or something. I don't remember how, because she's telling us about how he started hitting her before she took the baby and ran. We hear us yelling, and we turn and see this angry dude walking up to the condo, and she starts losing it. Drunk and angry, this guy followed her to our condo and was starting to come up to us. He was trying to act like he wasn't pissed. He was doing a, "Oh, you guys found her. Thank you so much. Baby, let's go home," kind of thing. But he was slurring and not doing a very good job of hiding how pissed off he was. My boyfriend has always been a pacifist. Honestly, he's even kind of a pushover. He's really non-confrontational and tries to find a way to talk stuff out and come to an agreement before doing anything. But before I could even say anything, he's across the yard and approaching this guy. As much of a pacifist as he is, he's also huge. He's built like a football player. He's 6'3", and at the time has a 230-pound weight limit on him. I've known my boy since we were 10. At the time, we were 20, and we've been dating for just over a year. I knew him better than anyone else. He's never done anything like this before, but he goes up to this guy and goes, "Not another step, dude." And he's shaking as he says it. The guy tries to walk around my boyfriend and goes, "No, it's okay. I'm just going to take her home." And my boyfriend steps in front of him and shakes his head. "You're drunk," he said. "So I'm going to pretend like maybe you didn't get what I just said. Don't come any closer." It's at this point the guy stops trying to pretend, and he says something like, "You don't know what's going on. That's my girlfriend. I'm going to take her home." And he tries rounding my boyfriend again. And one more time my boyfriend blocks him and goes, "Stop, dude." I've never heard this tone in his voice before, or since then. It was scary. It definitely wasn't him. The guy tried one more time before my boy finally put his hand on his chest and pushed him back a bit, keeping his hand on the guy's chest. "I'm telling you right now, you're not going anywhere near that girl and her child. So turn the fuck around and walk away." This guy was probably about 5'6", maybe 5'7". So when he looked up to threaten my boyfriend, he had looked like a kid. The guy finally looks at my boyfriend, and he says something that I couldn't hear. My boyfriend said something back. And then the guy stared at him for a moment, like he was deciding whether or not to do anything. My boyfriend finally pushed him away, and the guy stumbled back, and then started pointing at me and the girl as he was saying something, and then he started to walk away. I didn't learn till the next day, but the guy had told my boy that he had a gun, and that he was coming back, and that he'd kill him and I if we stopped him again. My boyfriend's response to this changes depending on who's telling the story. Origin, he told the guy that he'd feed him his own teeth, which made him laugh because he's such a dork. And he got that from a movie, and ever since then the line he tells everyone else is, "I'll be waiting." The woman was sobbing, the baby was sobbing, and I was shaking, because even though he didn't throw any punches or anything, I could tell that he was ready to hurt this guy if anything else had happened. And didn't really do much of anything outside of make sure everyone was breathing and take the girl to her sister's place. We didn't really hear much from after that, but I know my boyfriend sent her an email once or twice, and she's married now to someone else and had another kid last time that they talked. It was a really nice trip, despite that part, and a fight my boy's dad got into with someone in his family. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.